And regardless of your title, you're going to move in and out of these roles all throughout your day. And when you're in follower mode, if you're ineffective in follower mode, you are more likely to be toxic when you're in leader mode.
Today, I had the honor of sitting down to speak with Dr. Tony Bridwell. Dr. Bridwell is an organizational behaviorist, having held the role of Chief People Officer at Ryan LLC and Brinker International. He currently serves as the Chief Talent Officer at the Encompass Group. He is the author of 7 and now 8 books on leadership, mentorship, and culture architecture. Oh, by the way, he's also a professor. So I actually met Tony. He was my instructor for executive leadership at the Executive MBA program at SMU. Had a ton of fun speaking with him. I hope you enjoy the conversation with Dr. Tony Bridwell. Tony, thank you so much for doing this.
Absolutely.
I can't tell you how much I've been looking for.
This is fantastic.
This is good.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm hoping to talk a little bit about purpose,
Okay.
leadership,
Wow. Okay.
stories.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, but I was hoping maybe we could start in an unexpected spot.
You hit all the big ones.
If you're willing.
Yeah. Okay. Let's do it.
So on a selfishly kind of personal note, I have 2 daughters.
Okay. Right.
How in the world did you come to have a podcast with your daughter?
Yeah. That's a fantastic story. By fate, and almost by survival. It was an interesting Saturday morning that I'm sitting in my study early on Saturday morning, and my wife comes into my study and she says, "You need to take your daughter out of this house or she won't make it to 14. And for some reason,
Your daughter?
Yes.
Okay.
Ownership transferred. I don't know. I mean, it's one of those weird moments to where ownership of our children transferred at that moment. And I'm thinking, okay, something's really horrible going wrong. And it was a, 13-year teenage girl, hormones going one direction, mom's going in the other direction.
Okay.
And they just weren't having a good day. And so, I'm like, okay, come on, sis. So she's big sister. So I've always called her sis. All right, sis, come on. And so we hopped in my truck and we just drove out of the neighborhood and we went to the first place that we came to out of our neighborhood, which just so happened to be a Chick-fil-A.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like the second or third time I'd ever been in here. And I'm staring at the board. I'm like, I don't know what to get. So I get a chicken biscuit because that seemed like the big thing, and a large sweet tea, which was, I had no idea how yummy that was. And then I think she got 4 chicken minis, 4-count chicken minis and a large sweet tea. And we sat down and had breakfast. And it was the single most awkward moment of my fatherly career. She didn't say a word. And I'm just sitting there, she's just chewing on this. And I'm just sitting there just going, what do I say? I'm not prepared. There's no manual for this. And so we just kind of sit there in silence for, the whole time. And then I drained that sweet tea and then went and got another one, which I later realized I now drink unsweet tea.
Yeah.
I did not realize at the time why I felt so good after drinking a gallon of pure sugar water. And all the way back home, which was less than a mile, she wouldn't say anything. She just had her head up against the window of the truck, just staring out. She was having a really bad day. And I'm being a little chippy. And I'm like, well, that was fun. And she's like, grunt, right? So we get back to the house and we get out. She's walking around the truck, and I said, hey, you want to do it again next week? And the only word she spoke that day was, sure. And that started a tradition at 13, and she's 34.
Wow.
And we still have breakfast every Saturday morning.
Wow.
I know. Now, we've had to alter our breakfast a little bit because now I teach on some Saturday mornings.
Right.
And so we'll have it on Friday morning, or we'll have it before church on Sunday morning, but we'll find other times. But we still have that every Saturday morning. So we had done that for, my gosh, years. And I realized we were having all these fantastic conversations, and we just talk about life, right? We just talk about life, and we have a little cadence that we've had in the family forever, high, low, right? And that's just kind of a conversation starter. What was the high part of your day or week? What was the low part of your week? And what'd you learn? And that just started the conversation. And I realized that we were having so many wonderful conversations that selfishly I was trying to figure out, how do I hang on to these?
Yes.
How do I keep these?
Right.
And my first thought, Seth, was I'm just going to secretly record them. And then I thought, that's probably not the right solution. And then one year, quite literally right across the street from where we're sitting doing this podcast right now, a local radio station reached out and said, hey, we would love to interview you. You're an author. Your daughter's an author. We think this would be a great morning segment. And so they had us on the radio show. I went first, and then she went second. And she was so nervous. I'm filming the whole thing. It's like proud dad moment. Right?
Yeah.
I'm filming the whole thing. And we get in the elevator, and we're going down the elevator. And she's like, Dad, I don't even know what just happened. I'm like, sis, you did so great. I got it all right here. And so we got down in my car, and she's watching the video, and she just yells, that was the coolest thing ever. And I'm like, I know, right? And then I just blurted out because she said, we should do that every week.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't think they're going to have us on the radio show every week, right? And then I blurted out, we should do a podcast.
Yes.
And I just blurted it out.
Yes.
And she went, that's a great idea. And I jumped on it.
Love it.
And I left the parking lot. We were over across the street at iHeartRadio. I left the parking lot, and there's a Guitar Center, which is an electronics store, blah, 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 just catty corner. And I walked in, and I made a huge mistake when I walked in, because I walked up to the guy and said, we want to do a podcast, and I want it to be the best podcast ever.
Oh, boy.
And he looked at me and went, I got just the stuff.
Yeah, I bet he did.
And I'm like going, oh, I should have couched that a little bit. But we walked out of there with equipment to do a podcast in a backpack. And we went to and we had since moved to a different Chick-fil-A down closer to downtown. And we pull out our laptop and our little setup, and we'd have our mics, and we did a pop-up podcast in our Chick-fil-A for several years. I mean, well over 300 episodes. And I did it selfishly to record all these great, fantastic conversations. And we'd invite people to have breakfast with us and sit down and share their stories. It has been so remarkable. And of course, my daughter is super famous. And so we had no idea that it would go viral, right? I was just doing it to record these conversations so that she would always have this digital diary of life.
How cool.
That was the whole purpose of it. And now we get to share it with people in 26 countries around the world.
Okay, so that moment, sitting in the first, Chick-fil-A moment of, I think you said unprepared.
Yeah, totally.
There's no manual for this. I mean, that's parenthood.
Yeah, right.
In a nutshell, right?
Right.
Okay, so what can a young father like me and others like me be doing today to kind of foster that?
It's a great question.
Awesome relationship with our adult children.
I get that is such a great question. Two things come to mind. One, I had to learn the hard way to listen more than I talked and ask questions, because a lot of times she had the answer. Sometimes I had to fill in some of the blanks. So listen more than I talk, ask good questions. But the number one thing is consistency. And it's just showing up every week.
Yeah.
And if I couldn't make a week, since I can't be there on Saturday, can we do Friday? And it was consistency. And that is the biggest, because I think a lot of times we're just looking for it to fade off. And every week I would show up, and it's to the point now to where she will text me in the middle of the week, hey, Saturday? Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's something now that, and when she got married, I told her husband, who she has known since they were 14. So they've dated since they were 14.
Oh, wow.
The only person, they've only dated each other. Met at each other at church camp, came home and said, I think I found my future husband at 14. And
oh, boy.
Going, okay, let's tap the brakes
now. Yeah.
Right. But he has been part of our family for well over half his life.
Wow.
And so I told him when they got married, I said, all right, Saturdays are yours. And I get it. And so I can remember having our last Saturday morning breakfast right before they got married. And we sat down and we had a good cry and we talked and everything. And they came back from their honeymoon, and Landon was working, and his job had him working on Saturdays.
Okay.
And so
you put that call into the boss, right?
So,
they go, hey,
Allie has accused me of
Right.
praying a certain way.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I didn't have it. She said, well, Dad, Landon has to work on Saturday mornings. And I'm like, well, if he has to work, then if you're not doing anything. And so we picked back up. And so even today, he's like, look, I want to sleep a little past the sun coming up because we do have breakfast pretty early. And he said, it allows me to actually get my workout in before the day starts. And so he has been very gracious to.
What a trooper.
I know. He's so
How
good.
cool is that?
I'm telling you, best son-in-law in the world.
Wow.
Yeah. By far.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm so blessed. I only had to deal with one hairy-legged boy. And I mean, that was such a blessing for me.
But that's good for me to hear,
Yeah.
right? Because we're 7 and 4, right? Our girls are young, so I got all that ahead of it. But to hear consistency,
it's got
right?
consistency.
I've heard it said that you can't really orchestrate quality time, but you can plan quantity time.
That's
right. And then it happens.
And then it happens.
Moments.
Right.
So,
there's plenty of breakfast that was like, I could just do a do-over on this, right? I need a mulligan on this. And so there's plenty, but it's the consistency of showing up every week and just being there. Sometimes it was just about being there.
Yeah.
There's plenty of times that, we talked on the drive over to have breakfast, and he's like, can we not do a podcast today and just set? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely.
Great.
No need to do anything. Let's just set. And we would just set and we would just be.
It's beautiful.
Right? So, yeah.
Can we talk about purpose?
I love purpose. I love purpose.
Tell me if I'm off on this, all right?
Yeah.
I'm looking at kind of your bio and your background.
Yeah.
And I see educational background. I see architecture, theology, business.
Yeah.
How, looking back on that kind of circuitous path,
Yeah.
does purpose play in? And was that you kind of feeling out of like, okay, where is my fit here?
Yeah.
Is that what it was?
That's exactly it. I talk about this all the time. Everybody has a purpose, but not everybody's on purpose. And sometimes we find our purpose, but sometimes purpose finds us. And I fell into the camp of a squiggly line purpose journey. It's interesting that people tend to have two ways of thinking about their life. The straight line,
right?
I'm going to one day I'm going to study accounting and to be accounting 1 and accounting 2 and then get a CPA and then, rise up and one day be the CFO, right? And there's this very defined line of where I'm going to end up and where I'm going to be. And there's nothing wrong with that. But there's the other person that tends to be more of a squiggly line. I have been a little bit of a squiggly line, kind of a wanderer of types, trying to just kind of dial in, what is my purpose? And if you come right back to it, and I've written about it in a couple of different books, if you come right back to it, it's, why we exist, yes, but also how we use our gifts and our talents to benefit other people, right? So it's that kind of that purpose. And it took me a while to find it. And what I discovered along the way was everything I was doing was actually preparing me for this moment. You and me sitting down right here talking about this and having this conversation. And I think that was a critical part of the journey. A lot of people feel like they're wondering, and what I have to remind them on frequently is that there's something that you're going through right now that's preparing you for something tomorrow if you'll just pause long enough to pay attention to that. So I went on a little bit of a journey. Some of it was probably rebellious. It's like, okay, I know I'm supposed to be doing that, but I really don't want to do that. And I would go and find myself in the wilderness for a period of time, getting some of that squeezed out of me, and then get back on track, and then realize, okay, this is much more fulfilling to do it this way.
That redirect takes courage too, though, right? Because I think so. Think about the straight liners.
Yeah.
It seems like there's either one of two situations going on there. They stuck the landing on the first try, and that is their purpose, and they just went for it.
Absolutely.
I feel like that's rare, though.
It's probably more rare. Yes, it's probably pretty rare. And I have some friends like that stuck it on the first try, and they knew from the time they were kids that this is what I was meant to be. And God bless them. I mean, that is so fantastic, and can be very fulfilling for the rest of the human race. It's sometimes can be a little bit of a journey. And we have some good friends that actually, have an organization that helps people kind of tap in and do some discovery work around, how to find their purpose. And it's really about looking internally. What is it that I've been gifted with? What talents do I have? What skills do I have? What's really important to me? And how do I apply that externally? I think that's the big thing. A lot of people are on a purpose journey to look at how they can get something. But in reality, it's when you point it externally, that's when you find the internal. And I think that's where a lot of people get kind of tripped up, is they're trying to, they're on this journey to be happy and to find purpose and to find meaning. And they're just looking internally. And often when they just point it external, they will find the internal along the way.
It seems like there's a lot of squiggly liners who never go through the journey, right?
Yeah,
so they just stay on the track, and they just get, partway through the career, at the end of the career, and it just ends up having not been super fulfilling.
Right.
At our firm, we talk a lot about more than wealth. Right. So wealth is important.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah.
Pays the bills, etc. But what's beyond that, right? What is the purpose?
I think that's the thing. What's beyond the wealth?
What's beyond the wealth?
Right.
So
brilliant.
So question, it seems like there's a lot of pressure for young people in college, newly graduated, to find your path and be a straight liner.
Right.
What would you say to those folks kind of navigating the purpose versus, purpose versus profit maybe conversation?
That is the big conversation right now. Okay, I want to tap on something that you said. How much pressure do we put on our kids that they have to define a career by their junior year in high school? What do you want to study when you get into college? 1, where do you want to go to college? 2, what do you want to study when you get to college? What do you think? What's the average number of times a student changes degrees, plans?
Ooh, I'll say like 2.
A little over 2.
Okay.
Like 2.5.
Yeah.
Right. I definitely fall into that category. I skewed the numbers way because I just went 2 losers. I'm good.
And I'm a major
5.
changer too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where'd you start?
I started pre-med.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then switched to...
It's classic tale, right? So it's like, I was good at school.
Yeah.
So I was one of the smart kids. What do smart kids do? Well, you go to medical school.
That's exactly right.
Because you can, right?
Right.
And then I think this is a story that a lot of people resonate with. It's like you kind of reverse engineer this purpose.
Yep.
Because I want to serve people, which is true. But it's like, am I passionate about medicine?
Right.
And
what makes me icky?
Right. So then it's like, so then I fell into foreign languages and travel and did all of this.
Wow.
And then a career changed into what I'm doing now. So
you have a fantastic squiggly line.
Serial,
come on. That's awesome. But everything that you were learning along the way prepares you for what you're doing right now.
Right.
Right. And I think that's part of it. We put a lot of pressure on our kids early on to have it all figured out. And I think we create some of these challenges that we have along the way. I try to encourage, in school, of course, so much pressure. Select a school, select a major, get on the path and boom, boom, boom. It's very rare that students come out and go right into what they studied. It happens. But often, and Allie my daughter is a great example. She started off as an interior designer and realized, because she wanted to kind of follow Dad's footsteps as an architect and everything. And she realized, this is really hard. And so, plus, I think she thought Landon was going to end up in Austin, at UT Austin. And he did his first year at UT Arlington.
Okay.
In the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And he was going to do a year here and then transfer. So she went to San Marcos. She went to Texas State, which is just down the road from Austin. Very convenient, right? And I think she had this all planned out in her head. And then he joined a fraternity at UT Arlington and came home one summer and went, I think I'm going to stay. And so I don't know if it had anything to do with her deciding to change her major and come to UNT in Denton to be closer, mysteriously. But she transferred up, and then she went, oh, this interior design, I just don't want to do it. I think I want to do marketing.
Okay.
And so she changes and she gets a degree in marketing. She gets out of school, and the first 5, maybe 6 places that she goes to interview for a marketing position, she was number 2. And they're like, oh, you were right there. It was between you and one other person. Mm. And I remember having breakfast one Saturday, and she said, Dad, I'm just really tired of being number 2. Mm. I don't know if marketing is for me. And I'm like, okay, what do you want to do? She said, I don't know. I just need to clear my brain. Mm. I think I want to just go back and take some kind of class and just clear my brain. Like a sorbet, right? Uh-huh. Just clear your palate.
Yeah.
I said, what do you want to do? I said, if you want to go to school, I'll pay for whatever school you want to do. What do you want to do? She said, I just want to take a class. I don't know, something mindless. I think I'm just going to do calligraphy. I'm like, okay, if that's what you want to do, okay. And so she took a calligraphy class. And this was when social media was brand new, right? And she had just got on Instagram. I think she had like 12 followers. And, 6 of them were family members, right? And so she does a class and she draws something out. And she posted on this newfangled Instagram. And one of her friends says, oh my gosh, that is so cool. Make one for me.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
A business is born.
10 years later, she's a world famous artist. She has 22 books.
Wow.
Sculptures. She has a new sculpture in McKinney. And it all started with a calligraphy class. And she was a marketing major. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't even on her radar. Now, 10 years into her business, she realizes, well, that stuff in marketing, I'm actually using it now. Yeah. But she had no idea, right? She had no idea. So some of that was that self-discovery along the way. And again, going back and realizing, hey, as an interior designer, I learned about color. I learned about design. As a marketing major, I learned about how to move my business forward. All these things had been preparing her for this little palette cleansing class of calligraphy that's now turned into, she just did a mural in Mexico.
Wow.
If you're in the Dallas area, if you go to the Arboretum and you park in the garage on the other side of Gaston and Garland Road, walk under, the tunnel is her mural.
Oh, wow.
And it's an interactive mural. There's a QR code. You can scan it with your phone and point your phone down the tunnel, and all the butterflies on the tunnel.
Relatively new?
It's brand new.
Okay. Yeah. Next time we go now, I'll have to check that out.
Yeah.
Oh,
and
great.
so sometimes your purpose finds you, but you have to pay attention to it. And so we put all this pressure on ourselves to do this and to find this. And I think we probably load up our kids a little bit too much right off the bat.
Yeah.
With a lot of things.
Yeah, you can only connect the dots in retrospect.
Yeah.
Steve Jobs.
I know.
It's great.
Right. That's so true.
Can we talk about leadership?
One of my favorite words. One of my favorite words.
So let's see here. I'm going to play a little bit of devil's advocate.
Oh, be careful.
Right? Because
I don't know. Be careful.
You devoted a lot of time and attention to this topic of leadership. So what would you say to someone who says, Tony, don't you know we're living in a post-leadership society? Everyone is their own leader. Everyone has their own channel, their own brand.
Right.
Everyone is an army of one.
Right.
We don't. It's not teams. It's not leaders. It's individuals.
Right,
what would you say? Make a case for leadership.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of. I'm not a fan of the word leadership.
Okay,
I know. I probably threw you for a little bit of a loop.
Tell me more.
I've written 8 books on the topic, and I'm not a fan of leadership. I spent a decade as chief people officer for 2 global companies. And so for me, it was, developing people. And I thought along the way that if I could just develop you to be a better leader, we'd fix everything. And when I started my doctoral work, you're always asked right off the bat, what are you going to research? Mm-hmm. And so my thought was, okay, I'm going to figure out how to fix the broken leader. right? The toxic individual that we all come into. We have a name for him. We call him the brilliant jerk.
Mm.
And so my goal was I'm going to research and figure out how to fix the broken leader, the brilliant jerk, the toxic individual that we all come in contact with. And so I told my professors, hey, I'm going to study the brilliant jerk, and I think I know the answer, which is always fun to tell a professor before you do the research. I think I know the answer before I do any of the research.
Hey, hypothesis. Hypothesis. And
Okay, I had a really strong hypothesis, right? I think that I just need to help people be better leaders. And I had written, up to that point, I had written 6 books on that topic, on how to be a better leader. And I think I was well intended along that journey. But what I discovered along the way is that it really wasn't about leadership. It was about a word that we never use. It's about followership. And it was about, in order to be that better leader, we had to be a better follower. And what we discovered in the process is that we are both leading and following all the time. And this fluid motion, or constant, it's this duality.
Mm-hmm.
You're both and. But for decades, we have studied this as either or.
Right.
You're either this or you're that.
Yeah.
And Seth, a lot of times when I would ask students define a follower, it is not uncommon that we define being a follower as something very passive and weak and sheep-like. And we see it in almost a negative light. I actually had one student, I was lecturing in a doctoral class, and it's 9 first year and second year PhD students. And one student just got upset and said, look, I'm getting a PhD in leadership. Why are we talking about followership? And it was kind of this aha moment, because the research is very clear that you're both and always. And when you're in follower mode, and regardless of your title, you're going to move in and out of these roles all throughout your day. And when you're in follower mode, if you're ineffective in follower mode, you are more likely to be toxic when you're in leader mode. But when you're effective in follower mode, the research says that you're more likely to be transformative when you're in leader mode. It has everything to do with how well you follow. And we've been putting all of this emphasis and all this pressure on your leadership attributes. And leadership, as a word, is both a process and a property, right? It's the attributes and then how you do it, right? And we've been putting so much emphasis. Matter of fact, if you do a Google search on the word leadership, you're going to get 4 billion results, which, little side note, don't ever try to go find the 4 billionth one. I had a Saturday, I didn't have anything going on. I tried to find the 4, it's not there. I think they like to. But if you type in followership, you're only going to get about 4 million hits. It's not something we talk about, but it's absolutely everything that's inside of you, is that you're both and always. And so this journey to be a better leader, I have really discovered that it really starts with this awareness and this ability to be a better follower along the way. And it's changed everything. It's changed everything in the way that I look at everything.
Yeah, I think that was one of the more, it's just interesting because it's unexpected.
Yeah.
Right. Kind of a paradoxical takeaway that I had from your class. So what is if let's take a leader who's a great leader who is in follower mode,
right?
What are the hallmarks of what that looks like in a healthy way?
I should be asking you as a test to see if you actually paid attention during class, but I won't do that to you. Yeah. So there's 3 that when we study this, there's 3 that pop out. Independent critical thinker, right? And so the person who is curious, the person who looks internally first before offering external, ideas. And they're asking themselves, how does this impact me? What beliefs, so it's that critical thinking aspect of it. There's a courage that comes with critical thinking that allows me to be active. Now, if that's effective, if you look at the ineffective side, that's the person from a thinking standpoint is very passive. They're just saying, just tell me what to do, or they're very fixed.
Right.
Yeah, we never do it that way. That's not how we do it around here, right? And they're very fixed. So that independent critical thinker is willing to be curious, and they have courage enough to look at their own convictions, And then anything they offer is always for the greater mission, which is the second attribute, mission focused. So they're very mission focused. What is the ultimate goal? What is the ultimate mission that we're trying to achieve as an enterprise, as a team, as an individual, as a family, whatever the case may be? So they're very mission focused. That's effective. The ineffective follower tends to only look at self. What's in it for me? Exactly. And, how does this benefit me? And that doesn't work for me, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a very self-focused. And then the third one, which is probably the more complex, is an active partner, right? So the effective follower is an active partner. Somebody makes a decision. I may not fully agree. An active partner says it moves toward the mission. I'm in.
Let's do it. Yeah.
I'm in. Right.
Wow.
And so it's an active partner.
Takes courage too.
Exactly. Humility. A lot of humility, strength under control. We talked about that a little bit earlier over breakfast. And so if active partner is effective, then ineffective, and this is what really trips up a lot of people, the ineffective follower is an active competitor. And the active competitor is that person who's always pushing back on the idea, but they're pushing back on the idea not to help the mission, but with one goal in mind, and that is to insert my ego, to prove that I'm right and you're wrong, and to show that what I'm saying is true, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it creates this little, they're very fixed, they're very passive, it's focused on them, and they're constantly pushing back. And that's in follower mode, that's the very ineffective follower.
That competitive piece can almost like disguise itself as I'm just being critical thinker.
Right.
On the positive side.
Well, sometimes they say a phrase like, let me be devil's advocate. Oh, no, I know it. I said, be careful. I know your intent on that, and I know where you were coming with that.
Busted.
It's a slippery slope. Yeah. Because sometimes when people say that, it's a Trojan horse. I knew yours wasn't, because you were tossing out an idea. But if we're sitting around a table and people are presenting their thoughts, often we disguise critical thinking as, let me play devil's advocate. And if you really pull it back, it's a Trojan horse. If you really pull it back, what they're trying to do is insert their ego. They're trying to insert, let me tell you why you're wrong and an idiot and why I'm correct.
Right.
And that doesn't fall into the category of, one, being focused on the mission, but also from a critical thinking standpoint.
Yeah.
The critical thinker will look internally and ask the question, but they're also willing that if somebody presents an idea that's off mission, the critical thinker is willing to stand up and say, that feels off mission for me. And often the individual in the front of the room, if they're quote unquote the brilliant jerk and they're in leader mode and they're presenting ideas that go off mission, the critical thinker has the courage to say, that doesn't feel like it's on mission to me. I'm curious, tell me more. And there's this curiosity. The ineffective follower, and this is really dangerous, but the ineffective follower, if they're in passive mode, they're just going to say, yeah, whatever. And then that fuels the brilliant jerk to be more empowered to continue down that path. And often the brilliant jerk surrounds themselves with passive followers, people in follower mode that are very passive, so that they're able to move their agenda along.
Yeah, the effective follower does not sound passive
Not
at all.
And
actually it takes a lot of courage.
It does.
Humility. So I can see how then an effective leader knows how to fill it, almost models that being an effective follower.
Yeah. And there's this fluidness that you're moving in and out of these roles constantly. But you have to be aware, and this is really where a lot of our teaching has really taken off, is that creating this awareness that, regardless of my title, there's times where I'm sitting in the room and I'm actually in follower mode and I need to pay attention. Because when we look at other people, we're making judgments at a subconscious level. Matter of fact, we make two judgments in quicker than a split second. I mean, faster than that. Our minds subconsciously make two judgments about everybody we come in contact with, right? We judge how warm they are and how strong they are, right? These are the two judgments that we make almost instantly from practically a survival mechanism, right? How warm you are, how approachable you are, and then how strong you are. Are you for me or are you against me, right? And that strength, you know, that strength under control is very inviting.
Mm-hmm.
But if I sense that strength is overwhelming, I may back away from you, right? And so we're constantly making these judgments about individuals. Well, that same judgment that we're making about you, whether you're warm or you're strong, we're watching you on not just how you're going to lead, but we're watching how well you're going to follow. Are you approachable? Right? Are you approachable? And do you have strength under control?
Yeah.
Because the ineffective follower is strength out of control. Right. And we talked about this a little bit earlier. I mean, the word that's used for that strength out of the control, the Greek word that's used for that actually translates into a word that we don't use very often in the marketplace. And that's meekness, right? Because a lot of times if I said, you just need to be meek, people are going, well, I don't want to be weak.
Right.
And
that is not
the definition.
Yeah.
It's not the definition. And unfortunately, we've had a little bit of what's referred to as definition drift on certain words. And that's one word that's kind of drifted. But when you get to the core of that, Aristotle wrote about it, 300 BC. And he said, it's the perfect mean between strength and apathy is this idea of meekness. And it's that I can be strong, but I can be under control. And that really is the perfect definition of an effective follower.
Yeah. And what we're seeing, unfortunately, popular, like in influencer land, call it, this idea of leadership kind of on the socials is not that. It skews ways, strength. People think about being a leader as being a boss and telling other people what to do. And,
right.
Well,
so we confuse
very much
that.
A different idea.
Yes,
right?
we confuse that. Often when we talk about academically, when we talk about leadership, frequently we're talking about a power continuum, right? That leadership falls on this continuum of power. And at one end is positional power. At the other end is what's called personal power, right? And so at one end, positional power is I've given you a title and I've given you a position. I've assigned something to you or you've taken something. And that positional power gives you a level of authority that ultimately you could say, do it because I said so.
Yeah.
Right. At the other end is this personal power. And often it's equated with influence and things along those lines. But at that end, I don't have a title, but yet through how I interact with you, you're willing to get behind and come alongside and be on mission with me. And so that individual doesn't need the title. However, if I give you the title and you don't leverage the power, that's where you're the strongest, right? That's when you have strength, but it's under control.
Meekness again.
That's it.
I think a lot of people, so young professionals, they hear leadership and they go, well, I'm not a leader yet.
Right.
It's going to be year, and then they're thinking org chart.
Correct. Right. They're thinking org chart.
But
That's
really,
exactly right.
it's not a contingent on the position itself, right?
You can go into schools and no one has titles, but yet you see who people get behind, right? And it's interesting. We think I was the same way. I was ready for someone to. That's right. I was ready for somebody to promote me and put me in charge, so I could quote unquote be the leader. And I joke about it. I wrote about it in my last book. That we talk about the brilliant jerk all the time. When I was in my 20s and 30s, I wasn't even brilliant. I was just a jerk. I was just a jerk, and I didn't know any better, right? And a lot of it, social learning theory says that 70% of what we gather as learning comes from just watching other people.
Oh yeah,
and which is kind of scary because
hey, monkey see, monkey do.
I know, and it's kind of scary because. I look back at my own kids and go, oh, man, if I could only have a do-over, right? I would just redo so much because I wasn't paying attention. However, everybody's paying attention and everybody's watching. And sadly, I didn't grow up with a lot of people in my life that I could look to and go, okay, that's the way that it needs to go. Sometimes success can be a really poor teacher. Based off of how the world defines success. And depending on how an individual defines success, sometimes that could be a really poor teacher because we look at people and go, oh, they have all of the quote unquote things. How did they get there? And we try to model after that in order to get those things. And along the way, what we realize is that the body count's pretty high behind me
Goodness.
to get that stuff,
Yeah.
right? Harvard did a study about 5 years ago and said that the toxic individual is the most productive person in any organization.
Ooh.
Very scary.
I would say define productive, right?
Okay.
I go
Hitting the sales goal, getting it pushed over the line,
numbers.
hitting the numbers. And of course, you read that and you go, oh, great. The rise of the toxic leader, right?
There it
and
is.
you get to the bottom, and they said, oh, by the way, it comes at the highest cost
Oh, I'm sure.
from a talent standpoint, from a cultural standpoint.
Oh, personally as well.
Right. And so as a chief people officer, and even in my current role as a consultant, I get asked on a regular basis to help with the brilliant jerk.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, my first question back to the leader, the CEO, or whomever is, why are they still here? And I always ask that question up front because I want to know, am I dealing with a jerk or if I'm dealing with a brilliant jerk? And they come back and they say, well, they've been here for 25 years, or, they have the biggest book of business, or, they are the only ones who knows the secret formula to Coke and they won't tell anybody, right? Or they have some kind of institutional knowledge that they're holding on to and they won't share, whatever that case may be. And that puts them in this category of quote unquote brilliant. I use brilliant in a very loose term, but they have something that we're afraid if we lose that something, we're going to spiral out of control. And then I always ask the follow-up question. Well, what's the cost of this brilliance? It's like, well, that normally the answer is, well, that's why you're here, because, Ted's leaving, Susan's leaving, and, turnover is rising and there's turmoil in the culture and blah, blah, blah. And I normally get a phone call when somebody's broken something.
How do you approach that when they go, hey, we need you to help fix our culture, but you can't get rid of the brilliant jerk?
Yeah. So,
I mean,
you have 4 options when you face a brilliant jerk. There's 4 options that you're faced with. All 4 have implications in your culture, right? Option 1, you can tolerate. Now, if you tolerate it, and you know this from studying in my class, I'm a big fan of understanding story. We take in a lot of stories, right? And so if I tolerate the brilliant jerk, that tells everyone in the organization a story.
Yeah.
And what's their belief?
That's like that. It's not only condoned, but encouraged, because look, he's a top producer.
Right.
Right.
This is how we roll, right?
Yeah.
So you can tolerate, and that comes with a story consequence. Okay. So option 1, tolerate. Option 2, you can isolate. Isolate is, okay, I'm going to reassign you to be the special projects owner reporting to the CEO with no direct reports, and I take you out of the sphere of other human beings. And because the brilliant jerk typically will only respond to power that's seen as perceived or actually greater than theirs, because it's all about power.
Yep. I'm
trying to maintain my power. So I can isolate them, take you out of human contact, and have you report to somebody with greater quote unquote power. I can isolate. Option number 2. It still tells a story, right? Option 3, you can eliminate, right? And in every case, I cannot think of one instance in 25 years to where a CEO has made the hard call, and it is a hard call, that the CEO hasn't come back and said, Tony, I have been flooded with emails saying, thank you.
Thank you. Wow.
What took so long? I was going to leave, but I've decided to stay.
Wow.
I don't have one story of the contrary in 25 years. Almost in every incident, the leader comes back and says, I can't believe I waited so long. Now, there are some timing issues that sometimes have to play out, but the culture will almost always breathe a sigh of relief. So you can tolerate, you can isolate, you can eliminate, or the fourth one is you can rehabilitate. And often that's when we get called to come in and work with that individual to try to get them out of this state of brilliant jerkness, right? And you have to determine the brilliant jerk falls on a continuum. At one end is state, at the other end is trait. State is, I'm having a bad day. bad week, bad month.
The temporary deal.
Something's going on in my life,
Yeah.
and or I'm early in my career and I just haven't seen it done well.
Right.
I'm in an early state. Trait is this has been hardwired for 20 years, and success has been a bad teacher. Matter of fact, I've risen to EVP of the organization and have the biggest book of business. And here's how I done it. You can't argue. I've actually had someone say this. You can't argue with my results. I am here. I have this power. I have this authority. I've made this much money, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You can't argue with my results.
Yeah.
And then if you start looking at other results other than the ones that they want to look at, and you start looking at turnover and toxicity and all those
Body
other
count.
things,
Yeah.
right, body count, then the argument changes, but they dismiss that.
Oh, sure.
Because to them, often what really matters, and sadly, Seth, how we reward people
Correct.
tells a story
Yep.
that I don't get, quote unquote, paid to coddle people. Again, actual quotes from individuals. I don't get paid to coddle people. I get paid to put money in the bank. And so therefore, sometimes success can be a very bad teacher. Now, we do this to ourselves. We design systems inside organizations
Incentive structures,
that
et cetera.
reward, tells that story, that rewards that behavior. And so sometimes we do that to ourselves, and it comes at a cost. And so if you get somebody who is at trait mode, they're less likely to move. Now, history and research will tell us that often that individual won't move unless there's a life-altering event that causes them to rethink their own personal values and how
Some kind of a crisis.
some kind of a crisis that causes them to think about, okay, maybe something isn't working. You never want to wish that on anybody.
Yeah.
But what I will say is often that person may be at heart a good person, just not right for your culture. Because there are some cultures that actually reward that and thrive on that, and everybody there works under the social contract of this is how we work.
Yeah.
However, if you go into an organization and the culture is set up in such a way, the social contract is set up in such a way that we actually want to treat other humans as humans with dignity and respect, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and we believe that we can get profits if we do that right, and there's plenty of examples of that happening, then if that's the social contract and someone comes in and they go against that social contract inside an organization, then you're probably not a bad person. You're just not right for this organization, right?
One of the things I really appreciate about your course, also unexpected, executive leadership class, right? An MBA program,
Right.
full of executives. And one of the things you had us do was regular journaling exercise. So
Did that freak you out?
I appreciated it. I mean, I don't know if that was just kind of up my alley or what, but it may have freaked some of the class out. But you spoke earlier a little bit about the traits of the transformative leader. And a lot of that, you wind up kind of, because when people think leadership, they think of like the leader exuding something or an org chart, all these externals. A lot of it comes down to things we've already mentioned, internal kind of like character traits of meekness, of courage, of humility.
Yep.
So it's kind of counterintuitive, especially in today's day and age, and the way we talk about leadership online, is really that self-awareness and balancing all of that.
Yeah.
How can someone, maybe I'll ask this, is virtue, generally speaking, is this a prerequisite to great leadership?
I would say yes. Yeah. And understanding the virtues, Aristotle wrote about several of them. And if you think back to your journal that you did, it really was trying to get you in the habit of looking internally.
Sure.
Right. And it asked some questions to create some simplicity in your day, and take out some of the noise and some of the clutter. And then it caused you to be reflective at times, and then name a couple things. What do you think of the journal? Think back to your journal. Of the journal, what do you think was the hardest part? And I'm grading papers. I was grading papers at 5:00 this morning, and looking at some journals for the current class that's going through. What do you think's the hardest part in the journal? If you go back,
Man, I think initially it's just that battle of being consistent with it,
right?
Of carving out time in your day beginning of the day, end of the day,
Right.
to do it.
Right.
That's the first challenge
Right.
to me. But then
So-
the actual content of
Yeah.
it, you know,
So if you think about the content, it's, the 3 stories that you're going to tell: show up, speak up, and sync up. And then what's the big 3 things you want to accomplish for the week,
Mhm.
right? That's page 1, first part of the week. And then page 2, the end of your week: what progress have you made? What progress do you need to make? And then reflection, where you need to reflect on. And then high emotion and low emotion.
Mhm.
And then where are you 1 to 10? That's basically the premise of the journal. Which, by the way, in the verbatims at the end of every class, it's either the number 1 or the number 2 comments that's made after every class is about the journal. I still get people that email me and ask, do I have any more journals? Can I send them another journal?
Yeah.
Some people just love the exercise, but the hardest part is the emotion work
Yeah.
part.
We simply do not have the
It's the
vocabulary.
emotion work part.
Yeah.
Right. And the exercise is write down your high emotion and your low emotion of the week. And I still get, I was grading papers this morning and people would write a whole paragraph. And it's like, no. I just need a word. Just give me a word.
Stop.
But they write a whole paragraph trying to describe how they feel. And you hit it right on the head. Our emotional word vocabulary is very low.
Mm-hmm.
And that holds us back.
Yeah.
That holds us back. Do you remember the average number of emotion words that the average adult?
Oh, it was like appallingly low. Wasn't it like 5 or something like that?
4.
4, yeah.
4,
yeah.
right. Happy, sad, mad, angry.
What does that tell us about our culture?
Well, okay.
Because you hear about
yeah,
like different tribes of like, I have 10 different words for ice.
Yeah,
Or like,
exactly. Right.
Well, we don't have the vocabulary for
Oh, I know.
emotions.
Yeah, no. Greek has 6 words for the word love.
Wow.
We have 1,
Right.
and we misuse it frequently.
Apparently not very loving.
Not very loving. So I do this exercise in every class. We did it with your class, and I give you 10 seconds to write down as many emotion words as you can. And then we add up how many total words, right? And this last class had a really high number, like 126 total words, right? And then I say put them in 2 categories: what you would consider a positive emotion and a negative emotion. Every single class, every single group, I do this around the world, every single group, always more emotion words than negative words than positive words.
I can see that.
Right. Well, and we skew that way. So researchers have uncovered or identified 500 emotion words. 67% of them are considered negative.
Mm-hmm.
Now, some words can fall into both camps, but 67%, which tells you that as a human race, we tend to skew negative, right? So when you talk about virtue, if we tend to skew negative, then most conversations that we come in contact with, we tend to start off in a negative light.
Right. And if we don't even have the vocabulary to
my gosh.
identify,
Right.
filter,
Yeah.
all of that's kind of bombarding you and you don't even realize.
So I'm going to go back to how we started with your daughters, because this was one of the mistakes that I made early on. And that was that I assumed that her vocabulary, Allie's vocabulary, was the same as mine. And so I would say something like, and we would always do high-low. And, the high part of your week and low part of your week. And now we have this, and it's like, what's been your high emotion and low emotion? And there's a couple times on recent podcasts, she's like, Dad, I don't want to do this. I said, why don't you want to do this? She said, because it's hard. And I'm like, that's why we're doing it. Right. Because we were having conversations, especially with a 7-year-old, and you say, well, tell me how that makes you feel. Well, their vocabulary is like 3 words.
Right.
And it can be very frustrating because in their mind, they're feeling something really big, but they don't yet have a word to describe that to you. And, it's just, well, I feel sad. And that's okay. Let's unpack that a little bit more. And so one of the greatest, I think, gifts that we could give our kids as they're growing is to help them identify this expanded vocabulary. Because look, when you sit in counseling, and everybody needs to sit in counseling, we all need counselors. I have 2, and I have a doctorate in this, and I have 2, right? That's how screwed up I am. I need to sit down and unpack this. But when we sit down with our friends or with a counselor or with a professional, and they say, tell me how that makes you feel. And again, I get a lot of pushback, especially when I work in industries like the oil patch, energy,
Not the touchy-feely type.
Not the touchy-feely type. I was recently in far north Alberta, Canada, 5 hours north of Edmonton. I mean, I am 2 stoplights south of Santa Claus. I mean, I am way up there, and I'm setting in camp, right? And everybody's got coveralls, and I mean, these are men, right? And I said, let's talk about emotions. And they're all like going, what did we sign up for here? All right, wait, it's no touchy-feely thing. I said, if you'll just hang with me for just a little bit, let me have some conversation with you.
Oh, to be a fly on the wall now.
It was
Sorry, go ahead.
fantastic.
Oh, really?
So much so that I'm going back in October.
Oh, very nice.
Now, I think part of that is they're punishing me because it'll be 40 below when I go back. But a couple of them pulled me aside and said, I've never really had a conversation like that. But he said, it's so much of what's going on in my head. And it really is. It's how we're wired. I mean, we're both logical and emotional human beings.
Yeah.
70% of our day is emotional, right? Yeah, sometimes it feels like more than that.
Yeah. Some days more than others.
Right.
Yeah.
But one of the greatest gifts we could give our kids and even each other is an expanded vocabulary on just what these emotion words are. Because when someone sits down and says, tell me how you're feeling, if you only have a vocabulary of 6 words to describe that, you're much more complex than those 6 words. And often it creates this uneasiness. It's like, I'm having this feeling and it's really causing me to be, confused or whatever the case may be. And it's because I'm challenged with being able to articulate it. If you want to have any conversation with your team or whatever, always start. We do this all the time around our place. High, low. What's been the high emotion? What's been the low emotion? And, a lot of times I had students write in this last week. I didn't really have a high one or a low one. I said, that's fine. But did you have one? And just tell me what that one was, right? There's a theory.
It's just fostering that awareness
it
too,
is,
right? Just to practice.
Well, okay. So Dr. Goldman, who wrote and did the most research on what's called emotional intelligence, EQ, said that there's 4 levels of this. First, there's this self-awareness. I have emotions, right? And then it's management of those emotions. Okay, now I have them and now I know how to actually navigate them. And then that translates into, so those are internal. Then that translates externally. Can I read the room? Right? And if I don't have this emotional awareness that I even have emotions and I get into the room and other people are like, having a bad day and I'm just like jumping right in and I'm unaware, I can burn the place down accidentally. Accidentally, right? So I have to be able to read the room, and then I have to be able to manage relationships with that knowledge of, hey, look, it seems like you're having a bad day right now. Why don't we table this until tomorrow or whatever the case may be? That becomes a superpower. And if you remember, I talked about this in class, any superpower over-indexed becomes kryptonite.
Talk about manipulation, stuff like that, right?
You got to be very, very careful with that because
self-awareness is
it does. You have to have that self-awareness. And so it's such an important part of how we lead and how we follow. And knowing that and being more in tune to that, I think unlocks your ability on the key virtues of life.
Yeah.
That was way around the block for you. I'm sorry.
Love it. Can we talk about stories?
Oh, yes, please. It's a love language.
Yes. Yeah, no kidding. So let's imagine we've got a young leader out there that's watching this.
Yeah.
Why should they aspire to be a chief storyteller? What does that mean?
That's so fantastic. We are storytelling machines, right? 6,000 to 8,000 stories a day that we encounter in all different ways. Your brain is actually designed to interpret life through stories. So it's been said that story is the language of experience.
Wow.
So we're in this room, we're recording this podcast and everything that's going on in this room. Our brain is actually taking all this experience and turning it into a story.
Right, a narrative.
That's exactly right. And we store those stories, we keep those stories, and those stories form how we think, and how we think drives what we do, and what we do produces an outcome, and an outcome always tells a story. And so it creates a cycle of life. Stories are who we are. When we don't recognize the story that we're telling or being told, often it happens to us instead of our intentional way of navigating through that. And so in one of my books, Saturday Morning Tea, I talk about the 3 stories that we're always telling. We tell a story when we show up, when we speak up, and when we sync up. So the show up story is the nonverbal story,
Mm-hmm.
right? Just sitting in the room with somebody. We were in a room once and it was a U-shaped room and I was teaching up front and someone in the room made a comment about a leader in the organization. And off to my right in my peripheral vision in this U-shaped table, there was an individual who sat back in his chair, didn't say anything, and did the biggest eye roll in the history of eye rolls.
That's a story.
So a third of the room that's looking across this U-shape could see this individual, but another third of the room that was sitting kind of parallel and even couldn't see this individual. And the visual over here with people that watched that was so extraordinary that I had to finally stop and say, okay, that was a story. And of course, part of the room is like going, what was the story? And the other part of the room that saw this guy do that, they're like going, oh, dude, the eye roll. And at that point, he finally woke up and went, you guys saw that? It's like, hello, right? It's the nonverbal story that we tell just by being in the room. You know, we show up late, tell a story,
Mm-hmm.
you know, camera on, camera off, that tells a story. All these things are nonverbal show up stories. Then we tell speak up stories. These are words that we put out into the world. Now, I say this all the time. The actual word is not the leading character in this story. It's the supporting cast. We send a lot of emails, we send a lot of text messages, but there's a reason why your phone has 3,000 emojis on it, right? Because words are meaningless until they have tone and context, right? Because you've heard me say this before, I can send you a text message with 2 words, thank you, and a heart emoji, and the meaning and context of those 2 words are implied through that symbol. But I can send you the same 2 words, thank you, and the poop emoji, and it changes everything.
Yeah.
But it's the same 2 words.
Yeah.
Right? So you need meaning and context in order for words to have an impact. So the speak up story is really about the emotion and the tone and the context that comes along with this. When you type, you actually type in tone in your head. Subconsciously.
Say that again? You do.
When you type, you subconsciously type in tone in your head.
Okay, yeah.
You
verbalize it almost.
You assign a tone to the words, you know.
And that doesn't translate. That doesn't.
No, because you're typing.
Right.
Thinking, right? And you're typing that in that tone, and then you hit send, and that tone is no longer there.
Right.
When you read, subconsciously, you assign tone to the words that you're reading in order to interpret those words. And so depending on the last conversation you had with somebody, this is why it's not uncommon at our house that somebody will hold up their phone and say, read that and tell me if that sounds snarky. Right? Because they're trying to get tone out of that. So we assign tone, and that's the speak up story. And then the sync up story are systems, processes, and policies that run in the background that tell stories when we're not there.
Yeah.
This is really important for individuals who have roles of influence because, you know, you have a meeting, you have an agenda. The agenda is a system, tells a story. How we pay people, compensation, that's a story.
Yeah.
It's a system. It's how we interact with other people with the systems, processes. And in your business, you have a lot of systems, you have a lot of processes that your clients interact with. Those are telling stories when you're not there. And when those systems are inconsistent with what you say, there's nothing worse than someone come in and say, no, it's going to be all fine. It's going to be fine. Trust me, we have great customer service. And then someone interacts with a customer service system behind the scenes and it's broken. It's non-responsive. 2 different stories.
That story speaks volumes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And those 2 stories create tension and it causes cultures to wobble and it causes trust to drop. And so it's everything. So it's everything. It's all about story. We're always telling stories.
So speaking of stories.
Yeah.
You got
my
book
gosh.
coming out.
I know. Can you believe that?
This is really cool. I'm excited to read this.
Thank you.
What can people expect from this? This is 8th?
Yeah, it's number 8.
This 8th story that you've written.
Yeah. So the title says everything. It really is about moving beyond the leader. And this is, so when I wrote my last book, The Follower Effect, based on my research, it was about the individual, how to move from being a brilliant jerk to being an effective follower. I had to put a pin in that book or it would have been 500 pages. And so this is the follow-up. So this is how do I now help my team be extraordinary? And it's really about going beyond just being effective because you can be effective and burn the place down. So how do you really get to extraordinary? So there's 7 disciplines that help us do that. If you think about a team, it has 2 halves. You have to be engaged and you have to execute. Okay. Those 2 halves don't always want to go together. And so they're held together with connection. And that is you being able to be a leader and a follower. That's the connection that holds engagement and execution together. So there's 3 disciplines that help you and your team engage, and there's 3 disciplines that help you and your team execute. And so the 7 disciplines that define extraordinary teams, super quick read.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And all the answers are in the book.
I love it. I look forward to reading it. Tony, I got to tell you, okay, now we got a couple minutes here. I just got to tell you, your course, super impactful.
I appreciate that.
Reading your books and just who you are, right? So I think we need more people like you.
That's very kind of you.
And I just want to tell you, keep doing what you're doing because it's moving the needle.
Not everybody has the opportunity to get an MBA at SMU. And so what I would say is that our academy at the Encompass Group, you can experience a very similar course that allows people to really dig in deep and look at leadership through a different lens.
Oh, absolutely.
Through followership. So if people want to dive in deeper, there's ways to do it.
Oh, and I encourage it. I mean, you sharing over breakfast, you guys essentially do a lot of the same stuff that we were doing, very accessible to people who are interested in doing it. I encourage you to look into his work and appreciate you joining us for today. Hope you enjoyed it.